What's a company secret you can share now that you don't work there? Story 1. They're out of business now, but in the early 90s I worked at Radio Shack for a year and a half. When people returned an item because it didn't work, the store manager would just box it back up and sell it again as if it were new. When I asked him about it, he said, hopefully they'll return it to a different store. I nearly got fired when I refused to sell a guy a walkie-talkie CB radio that I knew didn't work. The guy was heading out on a hunting trip and was buying 3 of them for himself and his friends. We had 2 working ones, and the third was the broken one. Right in front of the customer, I told the manager that it didn't work and that I had tested it. The customer was glad I told him, and we arranged for him to get the last one he needed at a different store before he left. The manager was furious with me and nearly fired me. Sorry, but I wasn't about to send people into the forest with gear I knew didn't work. Hilariously, a few months later the manager was caught stealing from the store and got fired. Story 2. Government-funded refugee advocacy agencies at the time were approving a disproportionate number of young women, 18 to 25, from Syria and Iraq with histories of sexual assault for their services. Upon further investigation, my team and I discovered that consultants from the agency were engaging in sexual relationships with these girls. They were deliberately denying them employment opportunities to keep them in financial destitution. When the girls became desperate, the consultants would offer them private prostitution. I blew the whistle to the organization's leadership. They thanked me, and the consultants were gone the next day. There was a huge meeting with the senior board, apologies, speeches about how this isn't the way we do things, and so on. Within 3 months, however, I and the 6 other complainants and investigators had all resigned from the company for different reasons. On paper, it looked coincidental. In reality, we were each individually pushed out. 2 of the consultants we had uncovered as being the worst offenders weren't actually fired. They were given the option to resign. They are currently working at other agencies with vulnerable young women. Story 3. I worked at a dental clinic, and 3M would regularly send us gifts and free food for using their products, which is illegal. Ever wonder why you're always given Colgate samples? Because we get them for free. So when your dentist says, I recommend, forget that. They recommend it because it's what we're given for free, and we only hear about people using that product because that's what we hand out. Depending on the clinic, they're probably understaffed and overbooked. That means we're not flipping the rooms the way we were taught in school. Many people cut corners, which can lead to infections. A little girl at my clinic got hand, foot, and mouth disease after a cleaning once. Another patient got ringworm. You can get your records for free. They can charge you to mail them, but you can always show up at the office to get them without paying. Root canals are dangerous and bad for your health. Why does it smell like bleach? Because we're literally using Clorox to clean out the canals. And if you're getting them done by a regular DDS, there's a good chance they'll mess it up. You need to see an endodontist to have a real fighting chance. And yes, you do need a crown afterward. Once the nerves are gone, the tooth is dead and will eventually break. Silver fillings are terrible. We know fluoride is harmful in the long run, but it works best on children since less is absorbed once teeth mature. Still, money talks. We are required to report you if your kid has too many cavities and you keep missing appointments. That's considered neglect. And yes, we do talk about your teeth behind your back. We know you don't floss twice a day. We can tell if you smoke. We can also tell if you vomit a lot. Many dentists have huge student loan debt and will overcharge you to pay it off. Many assistants don't actually have proper hygiene. They just look clean. The dental world is all about appearances. With all that said, please take care of your teeth. Brush and floss at least twice a day. Floss first, then brush so the bristles can get deeper between your teeth. And brush your tongue. If you're going to drink coffee or soda, down it quickly and then rinse your mouth with water. Or lick your teeth afterward. It helps. Get in the habit of licking your teeth after you eat and drink. The longer sugar sits on them, the more likely you are to get decay. Remember, decay is caused by bacteria that has to be introduced. Be careful who you make out with. Change your toothbrush every 3 months or sooner if the bristles bend out. If they bend, you're brushing too hard. Stop that. Try brushing with your non-dominant hand if it's an issue. You can literally brush your gums away, and they don't grow back. Always use soft bristle brushes. I don't even know why medium and hard ones are sold. They'll ruin your gums. Stop bleaching your teeth at home. It just causes sensitivity. That bit of advice is called OHI, and it usually costs about $65. You're welcome. Seriously, stop putting blind trust in your doctors. They're people too. Don't be afraid to get a second opinion. Find a good DDS you can trust. Get a cleaning twice a year and take care of your teeth. You don't want fillings. Every time we drill into a tooth, it gets weaker. I have PTSD from being in LDA. I've seen some things. Honestly, I'm spiraling just typing this. If people knew better, they'd do better. Why don't we learn about this in school? No one cares if you lose your teeth, and most insurance companies don't even cover dentures. Did you know your teeth help you taste food and maintain balance? You need them. It's real. Guard your grill. Story 4. I don't think this is a bad secret at all. Back in college, I delivered pizzas for Papa John's, and the store manager must have had some kind of undiagnosed OCD or germophobia. Every night, he would assign someone to do the cleaning duties, mopping floors, double-checking expiration dates, throwing out expired items, etc. And every night, he would absolutely lose his temper and berate whoever was cleaning. They were going too fast, missing spots, or not being thorough enough. Eventually, he'd take over and do the cleaning himself. He was insanely picky about cleanliness and food quality. If something had 3 days left before the expiration date, he'd say, "Forget that, I'll order more. Throw it away, we're not serving it." He even paid out of his own pocket for special cleaning products because, according to him, the worthless crap corporate gives us doesn't get the job done. He also hired a specialist to deep clean the fountain drink dispenser, ice machine, and similar equipment. His motto was, "The machine needs to always be as close to brand new as possible." One moment that stood out was when he reduced a cashier to tears by yelling, "Would you eat off this floor? No? Then it's not clean enough." He wasn't literally telling her to eat off the floor. He was just making a point. After closing, he'd kick all of us out, lock the doors, and stay until 2 a.m. cleaning the place. You always knew when he had closed because the chemical smell would still linger the next morning. The result of all this? The store, food, equipment, and facilities were always in immaculate condition. Customers could somehow tell how much of a perfectionist he was, and they kept coming back. There's real peace of mind in knowing your food is made by someone willing to throw away ingredients before they expire and spend hours scrubbing everything until it shines. The real irony was how much the boss hated himself, convinced he wasn't doing a good enough job to keep the store clean and up to standard. It didn't matter how many compliments he got from customers or how many industry veterans told him they'd never worked in a place so obsessed with freshness and cleanliness. He still thought his Papa John's was a filthy barn. Eventually, he was promoted to a higher-level corporate role, something like district manager, where he had to visit other stores to make sure they met his standards. The ripple effect was immediate. A lot of stores in the area improved practically overnight. Story 5. The things I could share from Petco could fill a novel. I worked there for 17 years in almost every position, including general manager, and at least 10 different locations. Like many have pointed out, so much depends on upper management and store management. I've worked for amazing people and for terrible ones. Depending on the store manager, animals were either treated with care or as disposable inconveniences. I've seen more live animals that needed vet care thrown into freezers to save on payroll or vet budgets than I can count. Petco's live animal profits are a numbers game. Their most popular live SKUs are bought in massive quantities. They know most will die, so the more they buy, the higher their margins. For example, crickets cost a fraction of a penny but sell for $0.20 each. One live cricket makes up for 50 that die. The same goes for fish. Most freshwater and marine fish carry margins of 70 to 90%. Feeder goldfish and neon tetras are even worse. Neon tetras cost about $0.15 each and retail for $3.99 to $5.99. The minimum order is 50, but on average only 6 to 10 survive shipment. Most marine fish are live-caught. If it doesn't say captive bred, it's almost certainly wild-caught and often with cyanide. Petco's payroll model sets animals up for neglect. Unless a GM is willing to pick up the slack themselves, there simply aren't enough hours to properly care for all the animals. On a personal level, Petco was unbelievably uncooperative with me breastfeeding my 3 kids. My payroll model only allowed for 2 people to open and close, since you weren't allowed to be alone in the building. If it weren't for my district manager stepping in, I wouldn't have been able to pump at all. I had to fight constantly for a third person on payroll just so I could have time. At a national GM summit, HR told me flat out to dump the milk I pumped because it would spoil during my 17-hour trip with layovers. If you've ever pumped, you know that's not an option. It's liquid gold. The culture was toxic too. A friend once joked Petco felt like a meat market because everyone was sleeping with everyone. Honestly, she wasn't wrong. More sex was happening in Petco stores than you'd ever imagine. Dog beds were a favorite spot, and if you've bought one, chances are it wasn't clean. Sexual harassment was rampant, and HR rarely handled it properly. Drug use was widespread, even at the regional level. I know of a district manager who bought drugs directly from an assistant manager. At one store, a Savannah monitor lizard dropped off by a customer was traded by an employee for drugs. That infamous YouTube video of animals found alive in a Petco dumpster? It's real. I personally found animals in dumpsters at least a dozen times, sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose, sometimes because of lack of training. I can't imagine how many died without being found. Petco doesn't care about employees. Customers come first, no matter what. While I was 8 months pregnant working as a GM, a man threw hot coffee on me and called me a name after I explained why his severely matted dog had to be shaved. I calmly escorted him out, but when I told my district manager, I was instructed not to file a police report. The regional manager insisted the man still be allowed to shop there. And he did. The final straw for me came during the pandemic. Corporate claimed our safety came first, and that GMs could decide how many customers to allow inside at once. That was a lie. In Washington, all non-essential services were shut down, including grooming salons statewide. Petco kept theirs open with no safety precautions. We were told to reopen the next day if local sheriffs shut us down. My district manager was served multiple cease and desist orders from 2 counties and was told to ignore them. When he raised concerns with his regional managers, he was fired, not for ignoring the orders, but for not protecting profits. This was after 22 years with the company and multiple District of the Year awards. When he was fired, most of the GMs left. I could go on for hours, but the message is simple. Fuck you, Petco. Story 6. I worked at a Petco in Alaska. Apparently, brown and black mice aren't allowed up here, only white mice. One time, we got a shipment of black and brown mice and had to take them to the vet to be killed. The animals were literally shipped in on UPS trucks and delivered in boxes. I'd open a package and it could be full of fish, mice, or snakes. You never knew what was coming. It was wild. Luckily, my shift manager was a genuinely good person. She always tried her best to help any sick animals and was meticulous about keeping the cages clean. She would stay after hours to care for sick animals in the back and double down on scrubbing everything. Upper management, on the other hand, didn't care at all about cleanliness or the animals. They only cared about pushing pet rewards sign-ups. If I didn't pester every single person at checkout to donate or sign up, they'd get angry and dock points from me. To this day, I have no idea what those deductions were supposed to mean. One upper manager literally watched me for 3 hours straight at the register, telling me I wasn't pushy enough. Sorry, but I'll ask once, and if the customer says no, I'm not going to harass them. That kind of pressure is annoying as hell. He also scolded me for taking too long to clean the bird cages because it took time away from the register. Excuse me for not wanting the birds to stand in their own shit for hours. I was going to scrub them clean properly. And seriously, don't buy fish from Petco. Pretty much every shipment we got was infected with ick. At any given time, half of our tanks were in quarantine. We had multiple customers come back furious because a fish we sold them wiped out their entire tank. Fuck Petco. Story 7. This isn't exactly a company secret, but I worked part-time at a Domino's franchise during college. The owner, Marvin Covington, at first came across as a short-tempered, critical penny pincher who did everything possible to save money. He'd even watch over your shoulder to make sure you didn't put too much cheese on a pizza. Cheese is called white gold in the pizza industry, even back in 2002. But after working for him a while, you realized why he was so strict about margins. Twice a year, he sent out generous bonuses, money orders written from his own personal savings account, to the college students working for him. The memo line always read, "Keep learning." The amounts were directly tied to the profit margins of his stores. He was essentially doing profit sharing. After I graduated, I heard a rumor he was trying to start a small education grant trust for applicants at the Farmer School of Business at Miami University. I don't know if it ever came to fruition. Marvin also played favorites when hiring, but in the best way. Every single one of his managers was a former employee. 3 of the 4 managers at his stores while I worked there had graduated from my college with business degrees, and all 4 had part of their education paid for by him. Marvin Covington, the Domino's owner in Oxford, Ohio, originally from Vevey, Indiana, passed away in 2017. That man knew how to run a business and do it right. Story 8. I worked for a virtualization SaaS company. We handled hard drives, virtual, physical, whatever, converted them into a proprietary format, and hosted the images across as many servers as our clients wanted. We were global, supporting major companies like Microsoft and HP. Our equipment was designed to support up to 1,000 sessions at a time. With our growth, we were regularly hitting 800 sessions a day and creeping into the 900s. We raised concerns with management about needing more servers in the data center. The response? Pushback. They were too expensive and there wasn't enough room. That Friday, we got notice that we needed to have enough machines provisioned for Monday. Monday's request? 1,300 machines. That was it. We hit the breaking point. We tried reaching the boss, who was on vacation and ignoring us. We made a judgment call, provision 1,000, spread them across clients, and leave 300 unfulfilled while trying to explain the situation Monday. Monday came, and the phones were ringing nonstop. Hundreds of clients couldn't get in, even though they'd already been sent access codes. All we could do was apologize and say we were working on it. Then the boss walked in. "What is happening?" he barked. We explained. He went pale. When we asked what to do, his response was, "Lie to them. Tell them there's a back-end issue and we can't fulfill their machines." Then he walked out. We were all stunned. One of our techs stood up, said, "I'm out. Nice working with you guys," and quit on the spot. The rest of us, unwilling to lie, told customers honestly that we were working on it, but couldn't guarantee it would be resolved that day. An hour later, while the phones were still blowing up, the manager dragged us into a meeting. He cursed us out, blaming us for everything. I finally stood up and said, "We don't like the way we're being treated, and we won't stand for this." He immediately tried to change the subject, asking, "Weren't there 7 of you?" "Yes," we said. "One just walked out and quit." A week later, I was fired for standing up to him. But I sued for wrongful termination and unpaid overtime, and I won $10,000. The other techs later thanked me because the lawsuit forced him to change. They told me he stopped cussing, actually treated them with respect, and had completely changed his tune. Funny how much you can accomplish legally. That was a hell of a job. Story 9. I worked in insurance billing at night as a side job while going to school to become a physician. My job was to fight insurance companies over things like a 4-ounce bottle of betadine 5% being billed at $300 that insurers didn't want to cover, or life-saving procedures like transplants and cardiac surgeries. Sometimes I would spend months fighting for these cases. It wore me down and became deeply personal. I'd look at each patient's chart, their story, their history, their visits, and I just couldn't detach. Over the years, I quietly wrote off or erased several $1,000,000 in medical bills because I couldn't stand to see it fall back on the patients. A 3-day-old baby who needed a new heart. A grandmother, only 50, who needed a kidney. A father who needed a liver transplant for a rare condition. Twin baby girls who required in utero surgery to save them both. A husband needing brain surgery while his wife was pregnant. A firefighter fighting cancer. I made sure it was all covered. Silently, at night. All those families ever saw was a statement in the mail saying their balance had been taken care of, that their medications or surgeries were covered. But it was me. I pulled from donations, special funds, and programs that certain procedures could connect to. Everything got paid, but it never fell back on the patient. I never met a single one of them. I just hope it made a difference. Story 10. I worked at several market research companies, some in malls, others in a big box home repair chain, handing out surveys to people and paying them for market research data on things like movies, alcoholic drinks, and more. Each company had strict quotas to hit based on demographics like age, gender, and ethnicity. The problem was, most mall-goers couldn't be bothered to do surveys, especially when we only offered $5 for about 45 minutes of watching or tasting something. So we ended up with a handful of desperate junkies who became regulars, taking surveys under fake names over and over. The first company I worked for was fine with it and didn't care at all. The second company was just as bad but pretended to have integrity. They refused to lie but fired employees constantly for not meeting quota. They even ran out of movies to survey and expected me to convince mall-goers to answer questions about adult diapers and perfume. My manager and co-workers had been fired and rehired multiple times because no one lasted. At one point, a tropical storm hit Tampa, and sewage leaked into the office. The smell of rotten eggs, sewage, and human waste was everywhere. The mall refused to fix it, the company refused to fix it, and customers refused to go in. Instead, management blamed me for not being confident and positive enough with mall-goers and threatened my job. I quit. The third company was at a big-box home repair chain, working under contract. This was Florida, so most of the customers were retirees. I had to ask them about their water systems so the company could later call and try to sell them a filtration system. The retirees loved to complain about their water but absolutely hated giving out phone numbers, which I needed to get paid. I was supposed to get 10 sign-ups an hour. Nearly impossible, since the store went dead after 1 p.m. and most people were annoyed at being bothered. I wasn't even given a lunch break. On top of that, they missed one of my paychecks, so I told them to fuck off and left. My New Year's resolution was simple: never work in market research again. Story 11. There was an unwritten rule that our chief engineer would never tell the hotel owners anything that could make them liable if they knew about it. We had a massive mold problem. At one point, I was tasked with gathering data for our 5-year capital budget plan, basically figuring out what should be prioritized based on guest feedback, maintenance issues, and so on. Mold and smelly were by far the top keyword hits from surveys. This was before the company had an analytics program, and they actually ended up building one based on how I pulled and rated the data. Pretty wild. But mold never made it up to ownership. The business had been teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, and if ownership knew, they'd be forced to fix it. Remediation, drilling for ventilation, and proper repairs would have cost millions. I eventually left, but when I came back after the hotel was sold and a new management company took over, I found something interesting. The old company had set up a program to wipe all user files before handing over the computers. But since I'd done a lot of IT work, I was still an administrator, and my files were never deleted. Nobody thought to check. When I sat down at my old desk, I realized I still had 10 years of files, including all my documentation on the mold issue. We were preparing for renovations, and I was determined to finally get that fixed. No point in spending $30 million on upgrades just to cover up mold. The documents proved that the previous owners, who still held a 10% share, had known about the problem for years. That made them liable for millions in remediation and prevention. Renovations got pushed back 3 months while entire sections of rooms were gutted to the studs and rebuilt. On top of that, they had to pay extra into the renovation fund for the delays, rescheduled contractors, and shipment holdups. It cost them a massive amount of money. Story 12. Years ago, I worked at a sports store where we had a clever way of displaying the cost price of every product right on the tag, hidden in plain sight. Each tag showed the retail price, and directly beneath it was a code made up of letters. The code was based on the word copyrights, where each letter represented a number from 1 to 0. So, for example, if a pair of running shoes retailed for $239, the code underneath might read TOS, which translated to a cost of $192. Out on the sales floor, I'd glance at the tag, scrunch my eyes a little as if I was working something out, and then say to the customer, "You know what? I can do something here for you. How about I give you these for $227? Sounds better than $240, right?" To the customer, it looked like they were saving about $12 to $13, but I already knew we were still making a profit after tax. I'd usually bundle that discount with socks, 1 pair for $6 or 2 for $10. The cost of those socks was dirt cheap, like CCO per pair, so we'd make back most of the discount, if not all, with the margin on the socks. My manager loved it. This strategy worked for nearly every product line. Discount the big-ticket item a little, then upsell companion products with inflated margins to make the money back. The customer walked away thinking either, "I just got a nice discount on shoes and some cheap socks," or "I got the shoes discounted and the socks thrown in free." Either way, They were happy. I made the sale, and I'd tell them to come back and ask for me next time if they wanted a good deal. Many of them did. I built up a solid base of repeat customers that way. Story 13. Nearly every single hot drink vending machine is disgusting on the inside. I've seen them in 5-star hotels in central Manchester and in grimy factory break rooms, and they were all rancid. Most had flies in them. Your drink passes through stale, moldy, dried milk powder before it ever reaches your cup. Cleaners almost never properly clean the machines because they don't want to risk breaking parts. That means the chutes are always clogged with tar-like coffee buildup, and the milk chute is usually moldy, with flies happily feeding on it. 9 times out of 10, the overflow bucket inside hasn't been emptied in days. It fills with foul-smelling liquid, more mold, and more flies. The coffee machines at McDonald's aren't much better. The staff are usually kids who don't follow procedures. All they're supposed to do is empty the milk container, drop in 2 cleaning tablets, and press a button for the self-clean cycle. Instead, they wedge folded-up cup lids against the sensor so the machine thinks it's got the tablets. So you end up with the same problem as the vending machines, just with fewer flies. The milk lines grow mold, the valves are crusted with chunks of it, and the dispense heads have a little finger-tight screw that's supposed to be removed and rinsed. In 2 years, I never once saw a site that actually did this. Basically, it's like your drink is sliding through a moldy water park before hitting your cup. Unless you're fine with drinking through rancid, moldy milk residue, avoid hot drinks from machines. Story 14. I worked for a company that handled payroll and HR software. Their name ends with City. We had access to the social security numbers of everyone employed by companies that used our software. That even included the Kardashians and various other celebrities. I was also asked to do some shady things by the very company whose mobile app I'm using to type this. Yeah, I'm talking about Reddit. It involved work visas and Affordable Care Act reporting. I couldn't do anything about the visa situation they wanted me to fudge, but I did end up getting a ridiculous amount of overtime manually rewriting every single employee's ACA reporting sheet, since their healthcare wasn't even close to being considered affordable. I worked so much OT that, even during the period when unlimited overtime was allowed, my boss made comments like, "I didn't believe your timesheet, so I checked to see if you were actually working," and "You must have absolutely no life to be working the hours you are." In fact, most of my client list, which included massive companies in video games, social media, retail chains, and celebrity-owned businesses, had me doing some sort of shady payroll-related task. But the social media giant we're using right now was by far the shadiest. They had zero accountability and would try to pin their mistakes on us until we showed them screenshots of past correspondence or pulled up the audit trail that proved exactly who made changes and when. It was eye-opening to see just how shady corporations really are. Luckily, I haven't had to deal with that world for almost 7 years now. Story 15. I was my Walmart's fastest cashier and also a customer service manager. Our store had a reputation. People called it Kevin's graveyard because the store manager, Kevin, was absolutely horrible. He was abusive, belittled everyone, and constantly called people awful names. He even dropped slurs during company meetings. He didn't care at all about the well-being of the workers who busted their asses every day to keep the place running and his wallet full. On top of that, this waste of oxygen paid us the lowest wages of any Walmart in the state, froze raises for 2 years, and still pocketed massive personal bonuses, plus 5 vacations a year. I stuck it out way too long, about 4 years. Eventually, I decided I was done tolerating his greed. And I wasn't alone. Cashiers had a powerful tool, the price change button. Back then, Walmart would match any advertised price. I figured it was time for the store to give back. I started slashing prices, sometimes cutting customers' grocery bills in half. I'd usually throw in a wink so they knew it was intentional. One woman came through my line in tears. She had just lost her mother and sister in a car accident. I rang everything up, dropped the prices down to literal pennies, and wished her the best. She looked at me and said, "Bless your beautiful heart." For the last year I worked there, I did this almost every day. Who knows how much money the store lost because of it? It was easy to do, and no suspicion was ever raised. I wasn't the only cashier running schemes like this either, but management never caught on. I'm sure Kevin just shrugged it off while planning his next vacation to Alaska. Any competent manager would have figured it out instantly. But as long as his paycheck stayed in the 5-digit range, he didn't care. Neither did his lackeys. Yes, technically it was theft, but I don't feel guilty. I helped a lot of people who really needed it, and it gave me a reason to smile at work instead of feeling dead inside. I was basically a blue shirt in khaki pants Robin Hood. Story 16. Former escape room game master here. I worked at 2 different escape rooms under different owners. Game masters have way more control over whether or not you escape than most people realize. At the first place I worked, we were only supposed to give minimal help. It was mostly on the players to figure things out. At the second place, the policy was basically to try to get everyone out if at all possible. People who win usually have a better time and are more likely to come back. But regardless of official policy, the truth is that game masters control your fate. Both places I worked offered 3 free clues. Then additional ones cost either 2 minutes off the clock or disqualified you from the leaderboard. When groups asked for a clue, I always gave one, but how helpful it was depended on the group. If people were rude, obnoxious, or difficult, I'd send them cryptic hints that were almost riddles. If they were polite, funny, or clearly just trying to have fun, I'd send straightforward, crystal clear hints. We also had the ability to give extra time if we wanted. If a group was especially nice, I'd quietly add a few minutes when no one was watching the clock. So here's the takeaway. When you're in an escape room, remember that the clues aren't coming from a computer. They're coming from a real person who's watching and listening the entire time. Be kind, say thank you, and you'll almost always get more help. Story 17. I worked for Ashley Furniture, and here's the truth. Most of the furniture you get delivered has already been torn or broken and then patched up by techs in the warehouse. I saw countless couches damaged during offloading and tons of scratches on dressers and nightstands. The techs would fix them up just enough to look presentable and send them out to customers as new. Honestly, about 85% of the products that went out for delivery were repairs. If you really want to make sure you're getting something brand new from the manufacturer, go to the warehouse to pick it up yourself. When you do, they have to hand it to you unopened. Do yourself a favor and have them open it there so you can inspect it. This is part of their responsibilities, and it's not rude to ask. Plus, you'll save the $200 plus delivery fee and avoid the hassle of discovering damage later and waiting for a replacement. And those big fancy bedposts that look like hand-carved tree trunks? They're actually just 4x4s with plaster molded around them to look custom. They're cheap. I dropped one once, and it shattered into a million pieces. Story 18. I saw some Chipotle slander in another reply, so I wanted to share my story. I worked at a Chipotle for 2 years. The standards are fairly high, but we definitely don't follow every rule by the book. If food wasn't at the right temperature when we checked it, we'd lie on the paperwork, but then fix the issue. Our cleaning system was decent enough to be sanitary, but there were still random bits of rice or beans left on pans sometimes. We were supposed to wash our hands every hour no matter what, but in reality, we washed them so often, sometimes every 10 minutes, that we ignored or shut off the hand-washing alarm altogether. Like others have mentioned, there's usually pink mold in ice machines. Ours was kept pretty clean, but my GM told me horror stories about other locations and even black mold at a McDonald's he once worked at. Most of the food served in the mornings was just leftovers from the night before, refrigerated and reheated. We eventually sealed ours properly, but at first, we just covered them with parchment paper and a spoon. And despite the claim that unused food gets donated, no food pantry wants perishable items. Almost all of it went straight to the trash. Sometimes we'd sneak food out, but usually it was thrown away, except the chips. If there were extras, some employees would fill trash bags and take them home. We were strict about expiration dates, but produce, except avocados, often sat in the walk-in long enough to grow mold. Usually we tossed the whole container, though sometimes just the bad fruit or vegetable. And yes, 90% of the back-of-house staff vaped, including my GM. We always had mouse traps around, which makes me think we had a problem at some point. Officially, we weren't supposed to use bleach, but we snuck it in to do deeper cleans on the floors and bathrooms. We also handed out free food whenever we wanted, just marking it in the system as a regular customer. If we went over our budget, we stopped logging it. But here's the important part. You never need to worry about undercooked meat. All the meat is pre-cooked, possibly smoked. I'm not sure exactly. So even if it looks raw, it's safe. Honestly, I'd feel safer eating Chipotle food than most of what my family cooks at home, and I ate it every day. The people I worked with were kind, and I'd happily go back during summer breaks in college. That said, corporate is a nightmare. Every location is corporate run, and we weren't allowed to post any sign unless it was approved. Even if we ran out of ingredients, didn't have coins, or a machine broke, we couldn't put up a note. We had to remember to explain it to every single customer, or else they'd scream at us. And a personal gripe, I was one of the best employees, constantly praised by managers and coworkers. One day, I was told I'd be getting a raise because our GM had been given money to hand out raises. The district leader messed it up and gave it to the wrong people. When I asked about it, my GM was confused, but 2 months later, I finally got a raise. Just $0.25 instead of the $2 I'd been promised. Then a month later, a friend got hired and started at more than $1 higher than me, even though I'd been there a year and a half. I get that they need to incentivize new hires, but the starting pay should never be higher than the lowest paid experienced worker. I know this is an issue in many fields, but it still sucked. Story 19. A few from the world of radio. Paper ads. Back before streaming, radio airplay was everything for record labels because it boosted sales. But getting a new song going was tough. Labels and promoters would arrange paper ads with stations, meaning the station wouldn't actually play the song, but would report that it was playing it a certain number of times per week. Those playlists were sent to trade magazines and used to calculate the charts. Once a song started appearing on the charts and moving up, it had a much better shot at becoming a hit. And yes, stations often got something in return, sometimes cash or gifts for the program director, the person deciding what got played. Totally illegal, by the way. When chart companies started monitoring stations to get an accurate read of what was actually being played, day-parted ads became the workaround. Stations would technically play the song, but only in the graveyard shift when almost nobody was listening. Voice tracking. A lot of the local DJs you hear aren't local at all. I worked for a big radio company, and we constantly outsourced shows. I could send the music log to a DJ at a sister station halfway across the country, give them a list of local events and talking points, and they'd record a local-sounding show for me. Because we all shared the same music library, all they had to do was record their talk breaks into our automation software and hit transmit. A 4-hour show could be produced in 30 minutes. Just like that, I'd have a polished show from a major market talent. Pitching. Top 40 stations used to pitch their music up by 1 to 1.5%. Not to squeeze in more ads, but to make the station sound hotter and more energetic. The songs just sound better on 103.1 was the idea. In the 1980s, one top 40 station even played the shortest possible edits of songs, sometimes creating custom 3-minute cuts. That way, they could claim to play more music, even though the commercial load was identical to competitors. Calling a station. When you call in, you're probably being recorded. If you're funny, excited, or entertaining, the DJ will save the call and play it back later. They might even take clips of your voice and repurpose them months later in totally different contexts. For example, if you say, "Oh my God, that would be so nice," during a weather chat, the DJ could later drop that exact line into a promo. "Hey, wouldn't an extra $1,000 be great right now?" Caller voice. "OMG, that would be so nice." Story 20. I worked at a Forex company, and it was essentially a legal scam. The company used clients' deposits to pay its own bills. They even outsourced sales agents to a non-European country, which was illegal. Every single client was lied to. The whole business model fed on people who wanted to get rich quick and thought they could outsmart the stock market. Sales agents would tell clients where to invest, making it sound like a safe bet, when in reality, it was incredibly high risk. They never explained that clients weren't buying actual stocks, but CFDs, contracts for difference. They didn't mention the overnight fee you have to pay if you don't close your position. If you can't close with a profit, you literally lose everything. The company thrived on giving false advice and misleading people. What shocked me was how little fuss there was about these companies, even though they were stealing millions of euros every single day. I saw lives destroyed. One man in Switzerland lost his company, had to fire 50 employees, and ended up losing his wife and his house. He was so broken I believe he was close to suicide. Another victim was mentally challenged. He was scammed out of €50,000 he had inherited and left with 10,000 euros in debt, without even understanding what had happened. A woman who wanted to deposit 1,000 euros was tricked into depositing 7,000 euros. The agents told her to keep refreshing the page because the success pop-up hadn't gone through. By the time she realized, she had deposited 7 times her intended amount. Many clients broke down in tears when they discovered their life savings were gone. Meanwhile, the sales agents partied with vodka and cocaine at their desks, just like something out of The Wolf of Wall Street. They earned 10% commission on every deposit, so the chance of clients ever seeing their money again was basically zero. Most victims were too ashamed to tell anyone what had happened to them. I grew to hate the company, and I hated myself for being part of it. Limassol is full of businesses like this. It really feels like a city built on the devil's work. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.